Hi everyone, my name is Tolets. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is all about trying to help you practice and improve your English language skills. In this video, I'm going to talk about language registers, which are commonly known as communicative styles by junior high school students. There are 5 language registers: casual, consultative, formal, frozen, and intimate. You could argue that there are more, but I'm going to talk about only these 5 major ones. Have you seen some of your teachers react to some of the text messages they received from your classmates? Did they roll their eyes? Did you hear them sigh? We can't blame your teachers from reacting that way because some students don't understand different forms of language and levels of formality used in different situations. While you and some of your classmates understand communicative style or language register, your other classmates need to be taught or be reminded that different situations call for different forms of language and levels of formality. What is language register? Language register is a form of language used for a particular purpose or in a particular setting. So how we communicate will be determined by where we are and our relationship with each other. For example, if you ask your parents, friend, and school principal to sign a birthday card for your class advisor, you'll be using different forms of language and levels of formality. You're asking your parents, friend, and school principal the same thing, to sign a birthday card for your class advisor. With your parents, you can talk intimately or casually. Maybe you won't need to say please or thank you. Same with your friend. You may ask your friend to sign the birthday card casually, but not with your school principal. If you're going to ask your school principal to sign a birthday card, you may say,
"Ma'am, I'm sorry to disturb you, but this would mean a lot to my class advisor if you sign this birthday card, please."
You'll need to use title, sir or ma'am. You're going to be more formal. You'll say more of please and thank you. You ask your parents, friend, and school principal the same thing. But how you ask them depends on your relationship with each of them. How do you decide which language register is appropriate to use? Casual, consultative, formal, frozen, or intimate? Language register depends upon your audience. Who are you speaking with or writing it for? Language register also depends upon your purpose. Why are you speaking about it, or why are you writing it? Another very important thing to consider is the context. What is the situation? When is the time period? And where are your audience or readers? First, you take into account your target audience. In my example, your target audience are your parents, friend, and school principal. How you talk to your parent is going to be different from how you talk to your friend. And how you talk to your school principal is going to be different as well. The language form you use with your parents changes when you're speaking with a friend. And again, changes when you're speaking with your school principal. This is also the case in writing. Depending on who the writing is intended for, you should modify the formality, your tone, the structure, and the vocabulary of your speech or writing. These are some of the questions that you may think about when deciding the appropriate register to use. First, what do I know about my audience? In your everyday speech or writing activities, you identify your reader's characteristics, interests, and expectations, right? Second, what do my audience or listeners know and should know about my topic? And third, what details might affect the way my listeners think about my topic? At school, your teachers will most likely be your readers. Your teachers may ask you to write for a specific audience on occasion. As a writer, you should know your intended readers. If that information is not in the prompt or writing prompt, you should ask your teachers. The second thing you should take into account is the purpose of your speech or writing. You should clearly understand the purpose of your speech or writing. Is your primary purpose to inform, argue, persuade, describe, entertain, or narrate? You can precisely determine the appropriate language register to use when you are clear on the purpose of your speech or writing. In my example, your purpose is to persuade. You are to persuade your parents, friend, and school principal to sign the birthday card for your class advisor. The primary purpose of a doctor who is invited to speak about COVID-19 is to inform or to persuade the audience, to inform the audience of the dangers of COVID-19, and to persuade the audience to practice minimum health protocols or standards. At school, sometimes your teacher explicitly gives you a purpose for writing. If your science teacher asks you to do a research paper on global warming, your purpose for writing is to inform. To know your purpose, think of the goal of your speech or writing. Think of what you hope for your audience to think, feel, or do after reading or after listening to your speech. The third one is context. Context is the situation, setting, or environment. It's the place and time that you're writing for or speaking with your audience. Answering these questions will help you figure out the context, which helps you decide what language register is appropriate to use. In my example, the places you're in when asking your parents at home, friend at school, and school principal in his office to sign the birthday card for your class advisor would be very different. The context or situation that you're in is going to influence your choice of words, even your intonation and inflection. The context or situation dictates the type of register you use. Different contexts require different language registers. To know the appropriate register to use when speaking or writing, you should consider these three important things: audience, purpose, and context. I'll now talk about the 5 language registers: casual, consultative, formal, frozen, and intimate. You can add more to these, but I'm going to talk about only these 5 major ones. The first one is frozen, which is also called static register. Frozen text rarely or never changes. The wording is exactly the same every time it's spoken. Let's watch a short video.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." He replied, "What do you wish me to do for you?"
Many parts in Roman Catholic Holy Mass use frozen register. If non-Roman Catholic persons were to listen to those beautiful and profoundly written texts for the first time, they would have a hard time understanding those texts. Those texts in which words are used in a special way have a culture behind them. They express beliefs and values. Biblical quotation is another example of frozen text. Look at this. The words are exactly the same every time it's spoken. Often frozen text uses archaism, which refers to a word, a sense of a word, or a style of speech or writing that is old-fashioned but that has survived in some specialized context such as law, history, philosophy, science, and poetry. In poetry, many nursery rhymes contain archaisms. Take note that archaic words have current use in those specialized fields. Good example is the archaic word wireless. The use of wireless rather than radio by those who lived through the Second World War is understandable. It's interesting to note that in recent years, wireless has gained renewed popularity. Obsolete word isn't similar to archaic word because obsolete word is no longer used at all. For example, the works of Shakespeare are old enough and contain some obsolete words. Look at this line. We don't use the pronouns thou and thine anymore. Another examples of frozen text are the Pledge of Allegiance to the Philippine flag, or Panunumpa ng Katapatan sa Watawat ng Pilipinas, and the Patriotic Oath or Panatang Makabayan. We recite these national pledges with exactly the same words and maybe with the same enthusiasm. The purpose of pledge is to promote unity, of course. Wedding vow is another example of frozen text. I've been to many weddings and I have watched so many romance comedy K-dramas that I have memorized a wedding vow. Of course, not every wedding vow is the same, but there's a typical thing that is spoken as part of wedding custom. Another example of frozen text is the Miranda Doctrine. The policy of police arrest in the Philippines requires the reading of the Miranda Doctrine to the arrestee as stipulated in the Philippine Constitution. This Miranda Doctrine provides an arrestee or any suspect an awareness of his right to remain silent and to get his own lawyer. These are the other examples of frozen register. The second type of language register or communicative style is formal. Let's watch a video.
Congratulations to my fellow grads and families. We made it! I am honored to be the first valedictorian from the School of Cinematic Arts. For each of us, for at least 4 years, we've made the USC bubble within the big wide world our home. USC has shaped, inspired, and challenged us, and introduced us to friends that we will love for life. Many of you I know personally will literally change the world in some amazing fields of endeavor: the environment, global health, technology.
Formal register is often used in speaking to a large group of people. Informal situations such as graduation ceremony, like what we've seen in the video, is a formal register or communicative style where there is one-way communication and impersonal in nature. It uses polished speech, complex sentences, and precise vocabulary. You can't interrupt the speaker and ask questions. The speaker talks and you listen. A great example of this style of speaking is TED Talk. TED Talk is filmed in front of a live audience. There's somebody up on the stage and a big group of people in the auditorium. It's one-way participation because you can't just jump in and make a comment or ask the speaker. There's no interruption. The speaker talks and everybody listens. There's no interruption. That's why the speakers who are using a formal register should make sure that they explain very well the technical words or give their exact definitions in their speech, because the audience can't raise hand and ask them to explain terms they don't understand. The speakers must ensure that they provide all the information that their audience should understand. The speakers need to plan ahead their message or what they're going to say. A priest's homily or sermon in church is another example of formal register. We know a homily when we hear it. It's straightforward and very well written. During homily, you can't just jump in and ask a question. The priest speaks and you listen. These are the other examples of formal register. The third one is consultative register. Let's watch another video.
Come in.
Miss Bellamy?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Connie Harris. I'll be your doctor today. Would you prefer Miss Bellamy or can I call you Pat?
Pat's fine.
Great. Well, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Can you tell me why you're here today?
I have a terrible headache.
It looks really bad.
Yes.
Is there anything else besides your headache that you want to address here today at the clinic appointment?
No.
One great example of consultative style is a doctor-patient conversation. Unlike formal register, consultative happens in two-way participation. In the video, the doctor enters the door and asks the patient how she feels. The patient says she feels a terrible headache. The doctor asks what she feels besides the headache. If we finish the video, we would know the doctor's other questions and the patient's answers, of course. In this type of register, background information is provided. Prior knowledge isn't assumed. In this type, we observe back-channel behavior. In conversation, a back-channel signal is a noise, gesture, expression, or word used by a listener to indicate that he or she is paying attention to a speaker. Examples of those are, I see. Those expressions indicate that the person is listening, and in this type, interruptions are allowed. Another example of this type of register or communicative style is teacher-student interaction. The teacher speaks, explains, and asks questions. Feedbacking is allowed. There are interruptions. If the students have questions, they raise their hands and get called on. The teacher encourages them to ask questions. If they have a story to share, the teacher encourages them to share it with the class. A lawyer and his client, as well as an expert and an apprentice, are examples of this type. This type of relationship would exist if you were hired at a new job and the manager began training you. He encourages you to ask any questions you have about what's going on so you don't make a mistake in front of a customer later. There is frequently an imbalance of power in a consultative situation. There is always one person with more power than the other, which doesn't mean they're better than you or anything, but it does imply, for example, that as a teacher like me, I'm in charge. I have the authority in the classroom. These are the other examples of consultative register. The next one is casual. Great example is you and your friends in the cafeteria. You are chatting while eating. You are acquaintances. You don't need to give background information and explain everything when talking. Another example would be you and your family sitting around the lunch table. Because they are your family members and you know them very well, there's no need for background information. Interruptions are common. False starts and ellipses are also common. Ellipsis means you omit from your speech a word or words that are already understood or those that can be understood from the contextual clues. In this type, slang is also common. Slang is a type of language that consists of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal. Example of slang phrase is to ghost someone, which means you cut off communication with someone you're no longer interested in. Another example is to flex, which is another way of saying someone is showing off. Nowadays, teens have started using the slang phrase, weird flex but okay, as a snarky and mocking response to someone bragging about something considered questionable, bizarre, or unusual. These are the other examples of casual register. The last one is intimate register. This register is private. It's reserved for close family members or intimate people such as parents and children, siblings, boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife. Here, intonation is more important than wording or grammar. This uses nonverbal messages. Let's watch a video.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Well, we haven't worked out all the details ourselves. We'll need a few days to plan the ceremony. Of course, we'll have soup, roast, and ice cream, and then... Wait, would we live here? Here?
Absolutely.
Anna. Oh, we can invite all 12 of your brothers to stay with us. No.
In the video, we noticed the intimacy between Princess Anna and Prince Hans. It's the situation when the two were holding hands while talking to Elsa. Did you also notice Princess Anna's intonation? She was very happy and excited. In this type, the look is more important than the words or your grammar. Princess Anna was saying this, but Prince Hans knew very clearly that she was saying something different. I remember there was this time when my mom had a visitor who was very prim and proper, a well-mannered lady. I knew from her look that she was well-educated. When I approached my mom and tried to touch the radio, she told me to get a glass of water. I right away understood what she meant by that. My mom wasn't thirsty at that moment. She wanted me gone. She wanted me out of the room so she could talk to her visitor something that I shouldn't be hearing. So I went out and chatted with my neighbor. Because of that intimacy, our family members need not to say the words. They just give us the look and we understand. Thank you very much for watching and learning with me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now so you can help me grow my channel. Bye!